She'll pretend she's fine. She'll act like nothing touches her, nothing shakes her, nothing breaks her. She'll walk around with that practiced confidence, that easy smile, that attitude that says she's already moved on. But what you need to understand is this: her pretending is not her truth. It's her armor. It's the mask she puts on when she feels the weight of your absence pressing against the parts of her she doesn't show anyone. Women are emotional creatures, but they're also protective. They will never let the world see how deeply something affected them, especially when pride, ego, or confusion are tangled inside the story. So instead of admitting she feels your silence, she hides behind an image that tells everyone she's strong, she's unbothered, she's living. But behind closed doors where no one can judge her, that's where the truth really lives. Because your silence does something that arguments, breakups, and long conversations could never do. It forces her to face the emotions she tried to outrun. She tells herself she's fine because it's easier than admitting she's hurt. She posts like she's thriving because it's easier than showing she's confused. She acts like she's living her best life because it's easier than accepting the emptiness your absence left behind. Pretending becomes her survival mechanism. It becomes the way she convinces herself that she didn't lose anything valuable. But the longer you stay silent, the more that pretending begins to crack. At first, she'll use distractions, friends, outings, social media, attention, anything to avoid thinking about you. She'll convince herself she made the right decision. She'll tell herself she's strong enough to walk away without looking back, and maybe for a while that illusion works. But silence has a way of echoing in the places where distractions eventually fade. When the noise of the world gets quiet, when the day slows down, when the night feels longer than usual, that's when your silence starts speaking the loudest. She begins to notice the void. She starts to acknowledge the absence. And slowly, the emotions she buried start resurfacing. She'll ask herself questions she never thought she'd ask. Why hasn't he reached out? Did he get over me that fast? Is he talking to someone else? Does he even care anymore? And those questions turn into doubt. Doubt in her choices, doubt in her strength, doubt in her ability to replace what you brought into her life. Because for the first time, she realizes you're not chasing, you're not begging, you're not waiting at the door she closed. And that's when her pretending starts to feel heavy. The mask starts slipping. The confidence starts fading. The smile starts feeling forced. The truth is, she pretends she's fine because admitting she's affected would mean admitting she misjudged you. It would mean admitting she thought you would crumble without her, but you didn't. It would mean admitting she underestimated your strength, and a woman's pride makes that admission harder than you think. So she pretends, she puts on the show. She tells herself she's unbothered, but every time she feels that quiet sting, every time she senses an emptiness she can't explain, she knows your silence hit deeper than she expected. And that's why your silence has power. Not because it punishes her, but because it exposes the truth she tried to hide. Women feel absence in a way that builds slowly, almost invisibly, until it reaches a point she can no longer ignore. At first, when she pulls away, she tells herself distance will make her feel stronger. She believes not talking to you will give her clarity, peace, or emotional space. She thinks she's taking control. She thinks silence will empower her. And in those early moments, she might actually convince herself of that story. The first few days, she's fueled by emotion, pride, and the belief that she's doing what's best for her. She feels in control because she initiated the distance, but control without depth never lasts. Because as the days stretch out and your presence no longer shadows her routine, she begins to feel something she didn't anticipate. The slow, creeping awareness of what she removed from her life. Women don't feel a loss all at once. They feel it in layers. At first, she might feel relieved. She might think she finally has freedom from overthinking, from emotions, from the back and forth energy between you. But emotional relief is temporary. It fades. And when it fades, reality starts whispering the things she didn't want to hear. Your silence becomes the mirror she didn't expect to look into. She starts to notice the absence of the attention she once received effortlessly. She notices the good morning messages that don't show up anymore. She notices the comfort she used to feel knowing you were always just one text away. And when that comfort disappears, the absence becomes real. That's when her mind starts replaying everything. Not the arguments or mistakes, those were easy for her to focus on when pride was driving the distance. No, now she replays the moments where she felt safe with you, the memories that came naturally, the conversations that flowed, the inside jokes, the little rituals, the way you used to show up for her. When a woman feels absence, her memory starts working against her pride, reminding her of the things her ego tried to erase. And as those memories resurface, the emotional wall she built starts to lose its foundation. Women also feel absence in contrast. She'll meet new people, talk to friends, try different realities, but she'll notice that none of them feel like what she walked away from. She might compare the energy of others to yours without even realizing she's doing it. She'll notice the difference in how you listened, how you cared, how you connected. And contrast is powerful because that's when she realizes she may have misread your value or misjudged your intentions or underestimated your impact. As time passes, something else happens. The silence starts to challenge her beliefs. She expected you to reach out. She expected you to check on her. She expected you to break before she did. But when you don't, that emotional expectation turns into emotional confusion. She wonders why you're not trying. She wonders why you're not chasing. She wonders if you have emotionally detached in a way she didn't predict. And women don't like uncertainty, especially when it comes from a man they thought they understood completely. As weeks pass, the absence becomes something deeper. It becomes a question she can't answer. It becomes a feeling she can't suppress. It becomes an emotional tension that grows every time she checks her phone and sees nothing from you. She might not reach out. She might not break her silence. But she feels it. She feels it with a depth she pretends isn't there. Because absence isn't loud. It's quiet, it's subtle, it's gradual. But it hits the deepest when it's been ignored for too long. And eventually, even the strongest woman, the most stubborn woman, the most prideful woman, feels the weight of the silence she thought she could handle. When a woman distances herself, she fully expects you to fill that space. She expects you to chase, to question, to react, to show her that she still holds the emotional upper hand. That expectation is rooted in the pattern she's used to. Maybe you were always the one initiating conversations. Maybe you were the one fixing things when they got shaky. Maybe you were the one carrying the emotional load. So when she pulls away, she assumes the same script will play out again. She thinks she'll panic. She thinks she'll try harder. She thinks she'll take responsibility for the rift, even if you didn't cause it. But when you don't, when you suddenly stop doing what she predicted, that's when everything shifts. Because nothing disrupts a woman's emotional certainty more than a man she can't control. And your silence is the one thing she can't manage, manipulate, or predict. When you don't respond the way she expected, you take away the one thing she was relying on, your emotional dependability. She thought she knew your next move. She thought she knew how much power she held. She thought distance would make you chase, but when you don't, the control she believed she had begins to crack. Women feel control through reaction. If she pulls away and you panic, she feels secure. If she ignores you and you reach out, she feels validated. If she becomes distant and you close the gap for her, she feels desired. But when your silence matches her silence and even surpasses it, suddenly she no longer knows where she stands, and uncertainty is the one thing her ego cannot easily handle. It forces her to question the assumptions she built the distance on. It forces her to ask whether she misread your feelings. It forces her to consider the possibility that you're not waiting for her, and that idea alone can be more unsettling than anything she expected. Your silence removes her sense of emotional safety. It takes away her fallback plan. She thought she could distance herself without risking losing you. She believed she could pull away and you'd be right there whenever she felt like returning. But silence destroys that illusion. It tells her you're not just waiting in the background hoping she comes back around. It tells her you respect yourself enough not to chase someone who's choosing distance. It tells her you're not emotionally dependent on her decisions anymore, and that lack of dependence hits deeper than you think. Because when a woman realizes she no longer controls how you feel, she starts feeling what she tried to avoid. It's not pain at first, it's curiosity. Then it becomes worry. Then it becomes frustration. Then it becomes emotional pressure. She starts monitoring your absence. She pays attention to what you're doing, who you're engaging with, how you're living, and all of that happens quietly without you ever knowing. She might not reach out, but she watches. She might not admit she cares, but she notices. She might not break the silence, but she feels it. Because when you stop reacting, you shift from predictable to unpredictable. And unpredictability creates emotional gravity. It pulls her toward the very thing she walked away from. Because now she doesn't know what she lost or whether she can still get it back. Your silence breaks the illusion of control she thought she had. And when that illusion shatters, her emotions finally have space to reveal the truth she was trying so hard to hide. There comes a moment, usually much later than she ever expected, when the silence stops feeling like something she chose and starts feeling like something she can't escape. At first, she distances herself with confidence. She believes that stepping back will make her feel stronger, clearer, more in control. She tells herself she needs space, that she's protecting her heart, that she's doing the right thing. But the longer your silence holds, the more she begins questioning not just the situation, but herself. And those questions cut deeper than anything you could have said out loud. Because when you don't chase, when you don't try to win her back, when you don't break the silence she created, something surprising happens. She starts wondering if you simply outgrew her. That thought isn't just uncomfortable for her, it's destabilizing. It hits her pride, her confidence, her image of herself in your story. She expected you to wait, to worry, to stay emotionally available to her. She expected you to remain attached no matter how far she pulled away. But when you don't, when you stay silent and keep moving forward, she starts imagining a version of you she didn't prepare for, a version of you who didn't crumble, a version of you who learned, a version of you who became stronger, calmer, and more self-assured. And nothing creates emotional pressure in a woman more than the realization that a man she assumed would always be there might actually be moving on without her. She starts noticing the smallest shifts in your energy, even if she only sees them from a distance. The way you no longer react, the way you don't engage, the way your life seems to continue without her presence. Even if she has no direct access to you, she feels the change. Women have a deep intuition for emotional distance, especially when it comes from a man who once cared for them deeply. And when your silence stays consistent, that intuition starts screaming. She begins comparing the memory of who you were with the possibility of who you are now. She remembers the man who cared, who tried, who kept the connection alive even when things got difficult. But now she's faced with a man who refuses to chase someone who walked away. That difference hits her harder than the silence itself. She begins to wonder if you've reached a level of emotional maturity she didn't expect. She wonders if she undervalued your worth. She wonders if you've become the man she always hoped you would be, but at the same time, the man who no longer needs her validation. That thought can be a quiet kind of heartbreak for her. Because when a woman realizes a man has emotionally elevated beyond the version she knew, she's forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Maybe she left before seeing who he was becoming. And maybe now she no longer has access to that growth. That's when your silence transforms from absence into reflection. She starts questioning her decisions. She starts questioning her assumptions. She starts questioning whether she misinterpreted your intentions, your heart, your loyalty, and that questioning becomes the doorway to self-doubt. She'll replay conversations. She'll dissect old memories. She'll analyze your behavior in ways she never did before. She'll wonder if she pushed away a man who was actually good for her. And the longer your silence remains intact, the louder those questions get. It's not about punishing her. It's about showing through your actions that your value doesn't disappear just because someone failed to appreciate it. Eventually, the realization settles in. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's evolution. It's a sign that you're not the same man she walked away from. And that truth alone is enough to shake her more than any words you could have said. One of the most uncomfortable truths for a woman is realizing that the version of you she walked away from is not the version of you she's dealing with now. When she distanced herself, she thought she knew you. She believed she could predict your emotions, your behaviors, your reactions. She assumed that no matter what happened, you'd remain consistent in the role you played in her life. She counted on that predictability. That's why she felt confident pulling back, because she thought you'd still be there, emotionally open, emotionally available, waiting for her to decide what she wanted. But your silence disrupts that entire prediction. It breaks the emotional map she built around you. Suddenly you're not chasing, you're not checking in, you're not asking what's wrong, and you're not trying to fix the distance she created. And that alone can shake her more deeply than anything she outwardly expresses, because when a man stops behaving in a way she can anticipate, something powerful shifts inside her. She no longer feels secure in her assumptions. Women are incredibly intuitive, especially when they've known your patterns for a while. They sense shifts even when you don't speak them. They feel energy changes before you consciously act on them. But what they struggle with is a man who suddenly becomes silent, steady, and unfazed. A man who doesn't react emotionally. A man who stops seeking reassurance or offering it. A man who drops out of the emotional dynamic she thought she controlled. That unpredictability doesn't make her angry at first, it makes her curious. She starts wondering what changed. She starts wondering if you're finally seeing your value. She starts wondering if you're moving in a direction that doesn't include her. And curiosity is the first crack in the emotional armor she built. The next crack is frustration. Because when she can't predict you, she can't feel in control of the situation anymore. She can't anticipate what you'll do next, and that uncertainty eats at her. She might ask herself, why isn't he reaching out? Why is he so silent? Why does he seem so calm? Those questions don't show up in her actions. They show up in her thoughts. They show up in the way she checks your profile more than before. They show up in the way she replays old messages. They show up in the way she hesitates before posting something, wondering if you'll see it or how you'll interpret it. Those are signs of emotional disruption. And your silence created that disruption without you having to lift a finger. Because here's the truth. A predictable man is easy to walk away from. But a man who grows silent, steady, emotionally grounded, and detached from the need to chase becomes a mystery. And mystery is powerful. It pulls her attention even when she resists it. It makes her rethink everything she thought she knew about you. It makes her imagine scenarios that may not even be real, because silence forces her mind to fill in the blanks. And when she can't predict you, she begins to question herself. She wonders if she lost her influence. She wonders if her distance pushed you into a higher version of yourself. She wonders if you're becoming the type of man she always secretly hoped you'd become: confident, centered, strong, unavailable to uncertainty. And those questions don't fade. They build, they grow, they intensify. Your silence doesn't just hit her emotions, it destabilizes her ego. It removes the comfort of knowing she could return whenever she wanted. It forces her to realize that the one thing she relied on, your consistency, no longer belongs to her. And that loss, even if she never admits it, is something she feels deeply every single day. No contact isn't about punishing her, and it isn't about proving a point. It's about choosing yourself in a moment when you've been pushed to the background for far too long. When she distances herself and you respond with silence, something powerful begins to happen inside you, and that transformation is the real story. Because while she's busy pretending, analyzing, wondering, or trying to make sense of your absence, you're stepping into a version of yourself that no longer depends on someone else's emotional consistency to feel grounded. Your silence becomes more than a reaction. It becomes a reset. At first, the silence might feel uncomfortable. You might feel the urge to reach out, to solve things, to fix what feels broken. That's natural, because you're used to giving emotionally. You're used to caring. You're used to trying. But every time you resist that urge, every time you choose your peace over your impulse, you're teaching yourself something essential. You don't need validation from someone who isn't choosing you. And that's where the reinvention begins. As days pass, something shifts in your mind. You start noticing the things you ignored before, the hobbies you abandoned, the goals you paused, the confidence you let slip. You begin reconnecting with the man you were. Before you let emotions cloud your self-respect, you spend more time improving yourself than thinking about who isn't speaking to you. Slowly, the attachment that once felt so powerful starts loosening its grip. You begin to remember that you have a life outside of her, a direction, a purpose, a mission. And while you're becoming stronger, she's feeling the consequences of pulling away. Because the moment you stop chasing is the moment the dynamic flips. Suddenly, she isn't the center of your world, your growth is. Your silence becomes the boundary that protects you from emotional chaos and pulls you into self-mastery. You start sleeping better, you start thinking clearer, you start moving differently. Your energy changes, and whether she sees it or not, that shift affects her. Women can sense when a man is leveling up, even without direct contact. They feel it through intuition. They feel it through your absence. They feel it through the sudden lack of access they once took for granted. And while she's pretending your silence doesn't matter, deep down she feels the power of it. Not because it hurts her, but because it forces a realization you won't sacrifice your self-worth for someone who's unsure about you. That's where the real revenge lies. Not in making her miss you, not in making her regret anything, but in becoming a man whose value is undeniable even to the person who walked away. Your silence becomes a message without words. I honor myself. It shows her that you're not the man she could keep half invested, half involved, half seen. You're a man of standards, direction, and emotional discipline, and the truth is women admire that far more than they'll ever admit. Over time, the pain that pushed you into silence transforms into strength. The confusion becomes clarity. The heartbreak becomes purpose. You become a man who no longer needs to chase what isn't reciprocated. And that evolution is what hits her soul the hardest. Not the silence itself, but the man you became because of it. In the end, no contact isn't about her, it's about your rebirth.